Welcome to the new book releases for the week of January 13th. We have a good variety of genres this week, and there'll be timestamps in between so that way you can click around to whichever ones might be your favorite. I'm Morgan, and every week we do this new book release drop. If you're new to the channel, be sure you subscribe if you find stuff you like. That way you can be notified of new books every week. Let's go ahead and jump into our first ones. Jumping right into the deep end this week, we're going to start with horror as Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix comes out this week. The W's almost threw me, I'm going to be honest there. There's power in a book. They call them wayward girls, loose girls, girls who grew up too fast, and they're sent to Wellwood House in St. Augustine, Florida, where unwed mothers are hidden by their families to have their babies in secret, to give them up for adoption, and most important of all, to forget any of it ever happened. Everything the girls eat, every moment of their waking day, and everything they're allowed to talk about is strictly controlled by adults who claim to know what's best for them. Then Fern meets a librarian who gives her an occult book about witchcraft, and power is in the hands of the girls for the first time in their lives. But power can destroy as easily as it creates, and it's never given freely. There's always a price to be paid, and it's usually paid in blood. From there, we're moving into thrillers with Clever Little Thing by Helena Echelin? Charlotte's daughter Stella is sensitive and brilliant, perhaps even a genius, but a recent change in her behavior has alarmed her mother. Following the sudden death of Stella's babysitter, Blanca, the once disruptive and antisocial kid has become docile and agreeable. But what's unsettling is that she has begun to mirror Blanca's personality. From Blanca's repetitive phrases to her accent to fierce cravings for Armenian meat stew after being raised a vegetarian. Charlotte is pregnant with her second child and depleted and sick with pregnancy. She is convinced that Blanca herself is somehow responsible for Stella's transformation, but how could Blanca, dead, still be entwined in their lives? It's supposed to be following the mother's quest to do anything to save her child as the intuition that she knows something's going on here, no matter if anybody else fully believes her, or is it all in her head as they're telling her. Then we have Beautiful Ugly by Alice Finney. Author Grady Green is having the worst best day of his life. Grady calls his wife to share some exciting news as she is driving home. He hears Abby slam on the brakes, get out of the car, then nothing. When he eventually finds her car by the cliff edge and the headlights are on, the driver door is open, her phone is still there, but his wife has disappeared. A year later, Grady is still overcome with grief and desperate to know what happened to Abby. He can't sleep, he can't write, so he travels to a tiny Scottish island to try to get his life back on track. Then he sees the impossible, a woman who looks exactly like his missing wife. So interesting concepts there, not entirely sure where it's going with that. We move into fiction next, with one that's kind of a mystery, but to me it really read more fiction. That's The Lost House by Melissa Larson. 40 years ago, a young woman and her infant daughter were found dead in the cold Icelandic snow, lying together as peacefully as though sleeping, except the mother's throat had been slashed and the infant drowned. The case was never solved. There were no arrests and no conviction. Just a suspicion turned into a certainty. The husband did it. And when he took his son and fled halfway across the world to California, it was proof enough of his guilt. Now, nearly half a century later, and a year after his death, his granddaughter Agnes is ready to clear her grandfather's name once and for all. Still recovering from his death and a devastating injury, Agnes wants nothing more than an excuse to escape the shambles of her once stable life, which is why she so readily accepts the true crime expert Nora Carver's invitation to be interviewed on her popular podcast. In it, she completely drops her life in California and travels to Iceland to be on scene where everything happened with the podcaster as they're both investigating things. And there's a more recent murder that's happened at the house that her grandparents lived at. It's a whole thing. We move, though, to The In-Between Bookstore by Edward Underhill. When Darby finds himself unemployed and in need of a fresh start, he moves back to the small Illinois town he left behind. But Oak Falls has changed almost as much as he has since he left. One thing is familiar: in between books, Darby's refuge growing up and eventual high school job. When he walks into the bookstore now, Darby feels an eerie sense of deja vu. Everything is exactly the same. Even the newspapers are dated 2009, and behind the register is a teen who looks a lot like Darby did at 16, who just might give Darby the opportunity to change his own present for the better, if he can figure out how before his connection to the past vanishes forever. So not quite a coming of age, but a revisiting of youth. second chances of life. There was a tag, and I don't remember what it was anymore. From that, though, we move into fantasy with Water Moon by Samantha Soto Yamboa. On a backstreet in Tokyo lies a pawn shop, but not everyone can find it. Most will see a cozy ramen restaurant. Only the chosen ones who are lost will find a place to pawn their life choices and deepest regrets. Hana Ishikawa wakes on her first morning as the pawn shop's new owner to find it ransacked, the shop's most precious acquisition stolen, and her father missing. And then into the shop stumbles a charming stranger, quite unlike its other customers, for he's offering help instead of seeking it. And so they must go on a journey through choices somehow together. And she has to face her own dark secrets and choices. From there, we move, though, into a very different sort of story. Lightfall by Ed Crocker is the first in the Everlands trilogy. For centuries, vampires freely roamed the land until the Greys came out of nowhere, wiping out half their population in a night. The survivors fled to the last vampire city of First Light, where the rules are simple. If you're poor, you drink weak blood. If you're nobility, you get the good stuff, and you can never, ever leave. Palace maid Sam has had enough of these rules, and she's definitely had enough of cleaning the bedpans for the lords who enforce them. When the son of the city's ruler is murdered and she finds the only clue to his death, she seizes the chance to blackmail her way into a better class and better blood. She falls in with the Leeches, a group of rebel maids who reign in the worst of the lords. Soon she's in league with a sorcerer whose destructive skills make up for his lack of magic, a deadly werewolf assassin, and a countess who knows a city's worth of secrets. I do question, where do they get the blood, though? It's the City of Vampires. Our romantasy this week is Heavenly Bodies by Amani Eru. You know the most dangerous kind of villain, a woman with nothing left to lose. I love that line. In a world ruled by the cruel and merciless stars, Alara has been cursed by fate. A prophecy promises she will fall for a star, but that it will kill them both. So when Arti, Star of Wrath, War, and Chaos, descends to wreak havoc on Alara's kingdom, she flees her home, the Kingdom of Night, for the neighboring Helios, Kingdom of Light, and strides straight into the arms of an enemy prince. So it's star-crossed fates, possibly like enemies to lovers, and her being there is bringing to light his own dark secrets. It has a lot of favorable reviews from its indie published days. Next, we have Sci-Fi's. The first one up, The Way Up is Death by Dan Hanks. When a mysterious tower appears in the skies over England, 13 strangers are pulled from their lives to stand before it as the countdown begins. Above the doorway is one word: ascend. As a grieving teacher, a reclusive artist, and a narcissistic celebrity children's author lead the others in trying to understand why they've been chosen and what the tower is, it soon becomes clear that the only way out is for everyone is up. And so begins a race to the top, through sinking ships, haunted houses, and other waking nightmares as the group fights to hold onto its humanity, while the twisted horror of why they're there grows ever more apparent, and death stalks their every move. Sunshine's at the door. I don't know if it picked up her meowing at the door to be let in. Oh my goodness. That one, though, the cover, the color scheme is so gorgeous, and it sounds interesting. Then we have Death of the Author by Nadi Okafor. Disabled, disinclined to marry, and more interested in writing than a lucrative career in medicine or law, Zelo has always felt like the outcast of her large Nigerian family. Then her life is upended when, in the middle of her sister's lavish Caribbean wedding, she's unceremoniously fired from her university job and, to add insult to injury, her novel is rejected by yet another publisher. With her career and dreams crushed in one fell swoop, she decides to write something just for herself. What comes out is nothing like the quiet literary novels that have so far peppered her unremarkable career. It's a far future epic where asteroids and AI wage war in the overgrown ruins of human civilization. She calls it Rusted Robots. When Zelo finds the courage to share her strange novel, she does not realize she is about to embark on a life-altering journey, one that will catapult her into literary stardom, but also perhaps obliterate everything from her books was meant to be. I love the name that she titled her book Rusted Robots and the concept, and it just sounds really cool and touching. So I'm going to give the cat the mouse now. Our final sci-fi is Hammer Jang Luck by Makana Yamamoto. Eddie is done with crime. 8 years behind bars changes a person, costs them too much time with too many of the people who need them most. And it's all Angel's fault. She sold Eddie out in what should have been the greatest moment of their lives. Instead, Eddie was shipped off to the icy prison planet spinning far below the soaring sky bridges and neon catacombs of Kelper Space Station, of home, to spend the best part of a decade alone. But then a chance for an early parole appears out of nowhere, and Eddie steps into the pallid sunlight to find none other than Angel waiting, and she has an offer. And this offer is, of course, another job, and they must decide whether or not they're going to trust Angel again, because, sold them out. Our final book of the week is a nonfiction biography, memoir type thing. In Gad We Trust, A Tale Some by Josh Gad. For the first and possibly last time, Josh Gad dives into the wide array of personal topics, the lasting impacts of his parents' divorce, how he struggled with weight and self-image, his first big break, how everyone was sure his most successful ventures, both on the big screen and the stage, would fail, his take on fatherhood, and so much more. This trip down the rabbit hole of overly personal stories will distract readers from climate change, the downward descent of democracy and Western civilization, and the existential threat that AI poses to Drake's music, with never-before-seen photos and a few to no spelling errors. It's supposed to be like a collection of essays too, though, I don't know. That's how they say short things. That's all for this week's list. Maybe you were able to find one that you want to pick up or add to a TBR pile. If you do know of any other ones coming out this week that you want to let people know about, feel free to drop them in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this one though. You'll subscribe to come back for more videos, that you're finding something great to read today, and I'll see you in the next one.